The coffee pot shattered against the tile floor, hot liquid splashing across my ankles. I barely noticed the burn. My hands were shaking so badly that I couldn't even pick up the pieces. It was the third thing I'd broken this week, and Elena, the diner's manager, was losing her patience. "Sophie, for God's sake, that's coming out of your paycheck." Her voice cut through the breakfast rush chatter. Several customers glanced up from their pancakes and newspapers, then quickly looked away. Nobody wanted to get involved. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, crouching to gather the larger ceramic shards. My uniform, a faded blue dress with a stained white apron, felt suddenly too tight, too visible. "I didn't sleep much last night. Lily had another fever." Elena's face softened slightly at the mention of my daughter. "Just clean it up before someone slips. And take table 12's order. They've been waiting." I nodded, grateful for the reprieve. At 28, I was too old to be dropping things like a nervous teenager, too desperate for this job to risk losing it. Single mothers with GEDs don't exactly have Fortune 500 companies lining up to hire them, especially not in this part of Chicago. The diner, Lou's place, sat on the edge of two worlds. To the south were the gleaming skyscrapers and wealthy neighborhoods. To the north and east, the forgotten districts, where ambulance response times tripled and police presence dwindled after dark. We served both. Business people grabbing coffee before work, and neighborhood regulars who ordered the cheapest items on the menu, nursing them for hours. As I approached table 12 with my notepad, I noticed them immediately. 3 men in suits too expensive for Lou's cracked vinyl booths. The fabric probably cost more than my monthly rent. They weren't reading menus, weren't checking phones. They just sat, watching the door, unnaturally still amid the morning bustle. "Can I take your order?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. 2 of the men didn't acknowledge me. The third, youngest, with closely cropped dark hair and a scar that ran from his ear to the collar of his shirt, glanced up. "Just coffee." His accent was Eastern European. The words clipped. "Nothing to eat? Just coffee," he repeated, spacing the words like I might not understand English. I nodded and retreated, feeling their eyes follow me. Something cold slithered down my spine. I'd worked here long enough to recognize when certain types of customers came in. Lou's had an unspoken arrangement with some of the local outfits. They used the back room occasionally for meetings. In exchange, the diner never had problems with vandalism or robbery. Elena never talked about it, and I never asked. The bell above the door jingled, and the atmosphere in the diner shifted. Conversations quieted, silverware stilled against plates. The 3 men at table 12 straightened imperceptibly. I turned and saw him. He entered like he owned the place. Maybe he did, for all I knew. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a charcoal suit that made everyone else look like they were wearing costumes. His hair was dark with silver streaks at the temples, face all sharp angles and shadows. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Pale blue, almost colorless, scanning the room with casual ownership. Behind him stood a mountain of a man, hands clasped in front, eyes constantly moving. A bodyguard, obviously. The 3 suits at table 12 half rose before the man gave a subtle gesture, and they sat back down. Elena hurried over, wiping her hands on her apron. She nodded respectfully but didn't smile. "Mr. Volkov, we weren't expecting you." Volkov. The name rippled through my consciousness. Even I knew of Mikhail Volkov, the Russian businessman who supposedly owned half the city's high-rises and a good portion of its underground. Rumors about his activities ranged from money laundering to worse things I tried not to think about. "Last-minute decision," he replied, his voice surprisingly soft, with just a hint of an accent. "My usual table?" Elena nodded and led him toward the back, to a corner booth partially hidden by a brick column. As they passed me, his shoulder brushed mine. I stepped back quickly, mumbling an apology, though it wasn't my fault. For just a second, those pale eyes locked with mine, and something like recognition flickered across his face. I looked away first, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The next hour passed in a blur of orders and coffee refills. I avoided the back section where Volkov sat with his men, grateful when Jess, the other waitress, took over serving them, but I could feel his presence like a storm system, changing the pressure in the room. Then came the shouting. A man burst through the door, wild-eyed and sweating despite the cool October morning. He wore a stained hoodie, hands trembling as they emerged from the front pocket. In his right fist was a small black handgun. "Nobody move," he screamed, voice cracking. "Hands where I can see them." Time crystallized. A woman at the counter started crying. The cook, Pedro, froze with a spatula in hand. I stood paralyzed, coffee pot halfway to a customer's cup. The gunman's eyes darted frantically around the diner until they locked onto Volkov's corner. A smile spread across his face. Not joyful, but terrible. "Found you, you son of a bitch." Later, I would wonder what madness drove him to attack Mikhail Volkov in public. Desperation, drugs, revenge. It didn't really matter. What mattered was that he was pointing his gun at the back booth, and his hand was shaking badly enough that he could hit anyone in that general direction, including the young mother and her toddler sitting 2 tables away. The bodyguard moved with surprising speed for his size, shoving Volkov down. The 3 suits from table 12 were standing, reaching inside their jackets. But they were on the wrong side of the diner, too far to reach the gunman before he fired. I don't remember deciding to move. One moment I was frozen, the next I was lunging forward, driven by the image of that small child with golden curls, so like my lilies. The coffee pot left my hand, flying through the air toward the gunman's face. Hot coffee splashed across his eyes. He screamed, firing wildly toward the ceiling as he clawed at his face. I crashed into him with my full weight, sending us both sprawling across the checkered floor. The gun skittered away under a table. Pain exploded across my cheek as his elbow connected with my face. I tasted blood, felt the cold floor against my back as he scrambled to his knees, now looming over me, reaching for my throat. Then he was gone, lifted bodily away. Through my dazed vision, I saw Volkov's bodyguard holding the would-be assassin by the neck, feet dangling above the ground. The man's face was turning purple, coffee burns blooming red across his skin. "Enough, Dmitri." Volkov's voice, calm and collected, as if ordering breakfast instead of stopping a murder. He stood above me now, straightening his tie, not a hair out of place despite the chaos. The pale eyes studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. He extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, I took it, allowing him to pull me to my feet. His grip was warm and dry, surprisingly gentle. "You're hurt," he said, reaching toward my face. I flinched back instinctively, and something darkened in his expression. He withdrew his hand slowly. "It's nothing," I whispered, though my cheek throbbed, and I could feel blood trickling from my split lip. Around us, the diner was in chaos. People crying, shouting, the sound of approaching sirens. One of Volkov's men had retrieved the gun and made it disappear. Another was already herding the gunman toward the back exit, the bodyguard following. Volkov hadn't moved, hadn't taken his eyes from my face. "What's your name?" he asked. Sophie Miller." "You have good reflexes, Sophie Miller." The way he said my name made it sound like something precious, something owned. "And questionable self-preservation instincts." I swallowed hard. There was a child. Something shifted in his expression. "Yes," he said softly. "I saw." He reached into his jacket. I tensed automatically and pulled out a business card. He pressed it into my palm, folding my fingers over it. "For your troubles." Before I could respond, he turned and walked toward the back exit, his men falling in around him like planets orbiting a sun. Just before disappearing through the door, he paused, looking back at me over his shoulder. "Thank you, Sophie Miller. I won't forget." I stood there, trembling, as police officers flooded the diner. They took statements, photographed the bullet hole in the ceiling, asked if anyone recognized the shooter. Nobody mentioned Mikhail Volkov. Nobody mentioned the coffee pot or my intervention. According to the patrons, the man had come in raving, fired at the ceiling, and run out the back when he heard sirens. Elena closed the diner early. She pulled me aside before I left, pressing a frozen bag of peas against my swelling cheek. "You should go to the hospital." I shook my head. "Can't afford it. I'm fine." She sighed, looking suddenly older. "Sophie, do you know what you did today?" "Something stupid," I admitted, wincing as the cold touched my skin. You saved Mikhail Volkov's life. Or at the very least, you prevented a bloodbath in my diner. She lowered her voice. That man doesn't forget favors, and he doesn't forget faces, especially not pretty ones. A chill ran through me. I wasn't trying to help him. I was worried about the little girl. Elena's expression was pitying. Intent doesn't matter to men like him. Result does. She pressed something into my hand. $200 bills. Take tomorrow off. Rest. Put some ice on that cheek. I started to protest, but she shook her head firmly. It's not from me. He left it. She hesitated. Be careful, Sophie. Men like Volkov. They collect people like others collect art. Valuable things to be owned. I nodded numbly and pocketed the money. I needed it too badly to refuse, regardless of where it came from. Lily's medication wasn't covered by our bare-bones insurance, and rent was already 2 weeks late. Outside, the October wind bit through my thin jacket. The business card Volkov had given me felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. I didn't look at it until I was safely on the bus heading home, crushed between a teenager playing music too loudly through his headphones and an elderly woman clutching grocery bags. The card was simple, cream-colored heavyweight stock. In the center, embossed in dark blue, M. Volkov, and a phone number, nothing else. No title, no company name. I turned it over. On the back, written in a strong, slashing hand, if you ever need anything. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I tucked it into the inner pocket of my wallet, behind the photo of Lily. I didn't know then how those simple actions, throwing a coffee pot, taking a card, would unravel the careful threads of my existence. I didn't know that Mikhail Volkov never left debts unpaid. I didn't know that saving his life would ultimately save mine, though not before nearly destroying it. All I knew was that my face hurt. My daughter was waiting. And somehow I had entangled myself with the most dangerous man in Chicago. And the most dangerous part? For a brief moment when those pale eyes met mine, I hadn't felt afraid at all. My apartment building smelled of old cooking oil and cheaper floral air freshener, a futile attempt to mask the underlying scent of decay. The elevator had been temporarily out of service since I moved in 2 years ago, so I trudged up 4 flights of stairs, each step a small agony after the morning's events. Mrs. Patel from 4C was waiting outside my door, rocking Lily gently in her arms. The 5-year-old's golden curls spilled over the older woman's shoulder, her small face flushed with sleep. When she saw me, her eyes widened. "Mommy, what happened to your face?" Mrs. Patel's expression mirrored my daughter's concern, but she had the tact not to ask in front of Lily. She was very good today. The fever broke around noon. I forced a smile, ignoring the pain that shot through my split lip. "Thank you for watching her, Mrs. Patel. I don't know what I'd do without you. It is nothing. My grandchildren are all grown now." She transferred Lily to my arms, the child's familiar weight both comforting and exhausting. "You should put ice on that cheek, Beta." After Mrs. Patel left, I carried Lily into our 1-bedroom apartment. The space was small but meticulously clean, with secondhand furniture I'd painstakingly refurbished. Bright drawings covered the refrigerator, and string lights around the window frame cast warm patterns across the worn carpet. Small attempts to make our cramped space magical for Lily. "Did you get into a fight?" Lily asked, her small fingers hovering near my bruised cheek. "No, sweetie. Just an accident at work." I set her down on our faded couch. "Are you feeling better?" She nodded solemnly. "Mrs. Patel made me chicken soup and let me watch cartoons. She said I'm brave like my mommy." Something twisted in my chest. I pulled her close, breathing in the baby shampoo smell of her hair. "You're much braver than me." After tucking Lily into bed with a story, I finally allowed myself to really look at my face in the bathroom's cracked mirror. My cheek had swollen into an impressive purple bruise, my lip split at the corner. Beneath the obvious injuries, I looked hollowed out. Blue eyes too large in a pale face, blonde hair falling limply from its once neat bun. The woman in the mirror didn't look like someone who'd confronted an armed man. She looked like what she was, exhausted, overworked, and hanging by a thread. I stripped off my coffee-stained uniform and stepped into the shower, letting hot water wash away the day. Only then did I allow myself to shake, silent tears mixing with the spray as I relived those terrifying moments. Not the fear, though there had been plenty, but the strange, electric moment when Mikhail Volkov's eyes met mine, the weight of his hand as he helped me stand, the way he'd said my name. "Get it together," I whispered to myself, pressing my forehead against the cool tile. "He's not a person you want in your life." But as I dressed for bed, my fingers brushed against his card in my wallet. I pulled it out, running my thumb over the embossed letters. "If you ever need anything." I thought of our overdue rent, Lily's medical bills, the notice from the electric company threatening disconnection. I thought of how one phone call could make those problems disappear, and I thought of Elena's warning, "Men like Volkov collect people like others collect art." I slipped the card back into my wallet. Some prices were too high, no matter how desperate things got. That night, I dreamed of pale blue eyes and coffee pots shattering against checkered floors, of blood and bullet holes, of large hands pulling me from darkness. I woke disoriented at 2 a.m., certain someone was in the apartment. Heart racing, I crept into the living room, clutching a baseball bat I kept beside my bed. The room was empty, streetlights casting orange stripes through the blinds. In the quiet, I could hear Lily's soft breathing from the bedroom we shared. Then I noticed it. A large manila envelope that had been slid under our door. With trembling hands, I picked it up. No markings, no name. Just heavy, expensive paper sealed with wax. Dark blue, stamped with a stylized V. Inside was a check. Not cash, not a money order, but an actual personal check on thick stock, with Mikhail Volkov printed in the corner. Made out to Sophie Miller, for $50,000. The amount made me sit heavily on the floor, breath catching. Clipped to the check was a note on the same cream-colored cardstock as his business card. In that same strong handwriting. For medical expenses and inconvenience, no strings attached. I stared at the check until my eyes blurred. $50,000. Enough to pay off our medical debt. Enough for a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. Enough for a specialist for Lily's recurring respiratory infections. Enough to change our lives. But I knew, deep in my bones I knew, that money from Mikhail Volkov would always have strings, whether visible or not. I thought of the gunmen, of how efficiently Volkov's men had made him disappear. I thought of the rumors about his business dealings, the trail of broken lives left in his wake. I couldn't deposit the check. I couldn't invite that world into Lily's life. But I couldn't throw it away either. In the morning, I called Elena and told her I'd be coming to work despite her giving me the day off. We needed the money. The normal, honest kind that came from serving eggs and pouring coffee. The kind that didn't arrive mysteriously under doors at 2 a.m. "Are you sure?" Elena asked, concern in her voice. "Your face? It's fine. I'll use extra concealer. That's not what I meant." I knew what she meant. If Volkov had claimed me as his personal charity case, showing up at the diner might encourage further contact, but hiding would only delay the inevitable. Chicago wasn't large enough to disappear from a man like him. Better to face whatever was coming head-on. The diner was unusually quiet when I arrived. The bullet hole in the ceiling had been patched already, the broken window replaced. No sign of yesterday's violence remained, except for the hushed conversations that stopped whenever the door opened. Elena looked relieved to see me, though she frowned at my poorly concealed bruises. "Table 5 needs coffee," she said, by way of greeting, handing me an order pad. I fell gratefully into the routine. Coffee, orders, plates, tips, normal life. For a few hours, I almost convinced myself that yesterday had been a bizarre anomaly, a story I'd someday tell Lily when she was old enough to understand. Then the bell above the door chimed, and that familiar electricity charged the air. It wasn't Volkov this time, but the bodyguard, Dmitri, his massive frame making the diner seem suddenly smaller. His gaze swept the room before settling on me. He nodded once, then took a seat at the counter. With leaden feet, I approached him. "Coffee? Please." His accent was thicker than Volkov's, his voice a low rumble. "Mr. Volkov wishes to know if you received his token of appreciation." I poured his coffee with steady hands, surprised at my own calm. Yes, it was generous. Too generous. He does not believe so. Please tell him I'm grateful, but I can't accept it. Dmitri raised an eyebrow, studying me. Many people would not hesitate. I'm not many people. I set the coffee pot down harder than necessary. I didn't help him for money. No, for the child, Dmitri nodded. He mentioned this. Something about the way he said it made me pause. Does that matter to him? Dmitri took a sip of his coffee, grimacing slightly at the diner's cheap blend. Mr. Volkov values loyalty and courage. Those dark eyes assessed me. Both are rare qualities. I was just doing what anyone would do. His laugh was a short, humorless bark. No. Others froze. Others hid. You acted. He reached into his jacket and placed a small white paper bag on the counter. For your injuries. Inside was a tube of expensive-looking cream, the label in French. Tell him thank you, but you would refuse medicine? There was something almost amused in his expression. It is not money, just something to help with pain. Put that way, refusing seemed childish. I tucked the bag into my apron pocket. Thank you. Dmitri finished his coffee and left a $50 bill on the counter. As he stood to leave, he hesitated. The check. You have not deposited it. It wasn't a question. I swallowed hard. No. You should reconsider. Mr. Volkov does not like to be indebted. He adjusted his suit jacket. He will be at Athena tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. You should come. I can't. I have a daughter. Arrangements can be made. He spoke with the confidence of someone used to removing obstacles. Wear something nice. After he left, Elena appeared beside me, eyes wide. What did he want? Apparently, I have a dinner invitation. From Volkov? She crossed herself quickly. Sophie, be careful. Men like him. I know. You said that yesterday. But I'm not going. Elena gave me a long look. Maybe you should. Return the check. Thank him in person. Make it clear you want nothing more. A clean break. She lowered her voice. If you refuse outright, he might take it as a challenge. The thought made my stomach twist. I'd seen enough movies to know how these scenarios typically played out. The powerful man, the working-class woman, the gradual erosion of boundaries. I had no interest in becoming a cliché or a cautionary tale, but I also had no interest in finding out what happened when someone refused Mikhail Volkov's generosity. That night, I stared at the check on my kitchen table, Lily sleeping peacefully in the next room. I thought about Elena's advice, about Dmitri's veiled warning, about the way Volkov had looked at me in that frozen moment after the gunman fell. A proper thank you dinner, a return of the check, a polite but firm establishment of boundaries. Then back to normal life. I tried to ignore the voice whispering that normal life had never included midnight deliveries of $50,000 checks or invitations to restaurants I couldn't afford to park near, let alone dine in. That normal life had never included men like Mikhail Volkov with their pale eyes and implicit danger. I picked up my phone and typed the number from Volkov's card. My thumb hovered over the call button for a long, suspended moment. Then Lily coughed in her sleep, that familiar rattling sound that never failed to send fear spiraling through me. And I made my decision. I didn't call. Instead, I texted, I'll be there tomorrow. 8 p.m. Sophie Miller. The response came seconds later, as if he'd been waiting. I look forward to it. Athena wasn't just a restaurant, it was an institution, the kind of place where politicians sealed deals and celebrities hid from paparazzi. Located on the top floor of one of Chicago's sleekest skyscrapers, it boasted panoramic views of the city and a 3-month waiting list for reservations, unless, apparently, you were Mikhail Volkov. I stood outside the gleaming entrance, heart hammering against my ribs. The black dress I wore, my only nice one, purchased years ago for a college friend's wedding, suddenly felt woefully inadequate. Around me, women glided past in designer outfits that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Miss Miller? A uniformed attendant approached, somehow identifying me immediately. Mr. Volkov is expecting you. Please follow me. The elevator ride to the 50th floor gave me a moment to collect myself. I'd spent an hour debating what to do with my hair before finally leaving it down, the blonde waves softening the worst of the bruising on my face. I'd borrowed makeup from Jess at the diner, who had experience covering the occasional black eye. The cut on my lip remained visible, but at least I looked less like I'd been in a bar fight. Mrs. Patel had agreed to stay with Lily, her knowing eyes taking in my dress and nervous energy without comment. "You deserve a nice evening," was all she'd said, squeezing my hand. The restaurant was everything I'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, soft jazz from a live trio in the corner. The maitre d' led me through the main dining room toward a secluded area separated by frosted glass panels. Volkov stood as I approached. He wore a perfectly tailored dark suit, but somehow he looked more dangerous in this refined setting than he had in the chaotic aftermath of the shooting. "Sophie." My name in his accent sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. "You look lovely. Thank you for inviting me." I remained standing, clutching my small purse where the folded check rested, though it wasn't necessary. "Please, sit." He gestured to the chair a waiter had pulled out for me. The table was set for two, though I noticed Dmitri seated at a nearby table, facing the entrance. "I disagree. It was very necessary." As I sat, I noticed how the private alcove gave us both a view of the Chicago skyline, while shielding us from the curious eyes of other diners. A bottle of champagne already rested in an ice bucket beside the table. "I brought your check," I said, reaching for my purse. Better to handle this immediately, before the situation became any more surreal. Volkov raised his hand slightly. "Later. First, let's have dinner." "Mr. Volkov." "Mikhail, please." "Mikhail." The name felt foreign on my tongue. "I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept the money. It's too much, and I didn't help you for a reward." Something flickered across his face. Amusement, perhaps, or curiosity. "You helped me because a child was in danger. This I understand and respect." He leaned forward slightly. "But a debt is a debt, Sophie. In my world, balances must be maintained. Throwing a coffee pot isn't worth $50,000. Saving my life is." His pale eyes held mine, intensity radiating from him like heat. "Do you know who that man was?" I shook my head. "Anton Kazlov, former associate who made unfortunate choices." The waiter approached with the champagne, and Volkov paused while the man filled our glasses. When we were alone again, he continued. "He would not have stopped with one bullet." The casual way he referenced violence made my skin prickle. "Is he no longer a concern?" Volkov lifted his glass to quick reflexes. I hesitated, then lifted my own glass to touch his. The champagne was like nothing I'd ever tasted, light and complex, bubbles dancing across my tongue. "Now," he said, setting down his glass, "tell me about yourself, Sophie Miller." The request was so normal, so date-like, that I almost laughed. "There's not much to tell. I'm a waitress. I have a 5-year-old daughter. We get by." "The father?" The question was direct, invasive even, but I found myself answering, "Not in the picture. He left when I told him I was pregnant." Volkov's expression darkened momentarily. "His loss." He studied me. "Your daughter is ill?" I tensed. "How did you know that?" "Dmitri is thorough in his reports." The idea that Volkov had sent someone to gather information about me sent a cold wave down my spine. "You had me investigated? I make it a point to know who enters my life." He said it matter-of-factly, as if background checks were perfectly normal social protocol. "Lily has chronic bronchial infections. Your insurance covers only basic treatments. You work double shifts to afford her medication." "My daughter is off limits." The words came out sharper than I intended. But I didn't back down. "Whatever this is, this dinner, the money, it doesn't include her." Rather than being offended, Volkov looked approving, a mother protecting her child, as it should be. He signaled to the waiter. "Shall we order? The chef has prepared several options for us." The meal progressed with surreal normality. The food was exquisite, dishes I couldn't pronounce but that melted on my tongue, flavors I'd never experienced. Volkov spoke about the city, about art, about music. Carefully neutral topics that revealed little about himself while drawing more from me than I intended to share. He was charming, educated, articulate. If I didn't know who he was, what he was, I might have enjoyed myself. As it was, I remained on guard, aware that every question, every smile, likely had purpose behind it. "You're studying me," he observed after the main course was cleared. "Trying to reconcile what you've heard with what you see." I straightened in my chair. "Can you blame me? Your reputation precedes you." "And what is my reputation, Sophie?" There was genuine curiosity in his voice. "That you're dangerous, that people who cross you disappear. And yet you came tonight. I wanted to return your check in person, to thank you properly and establish boundaries." His lips curved slightly. "Boundaries. I'm not for sale, Mr. Volkov." "Mikhail," he corrected automatically. "And I never suggested you were." He leaned back, something almost like respect in his gaze. "Most people in your position would have cashed the check without question. You bring it back and demand boundaries. Fascinating." "I'm not trying to be fascinating. I'm trying to keep my life simple." Simple. He tested the word. "Is that what you want? A simple life of double shifts and overdue bills, of watching your daughter struggle to breathe while you decide between medication and rent?" The words stung because they contain truth. What I want is irrelevant. What matters is keeping Lily safe and healthy. And if I could ensure both, better healthcare, better housing, better schools, all while keeping her safe, at what cost? I asked quietly. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he signaled for dessert to be served. Delicate pastries alongside fresh berries and cream. "Have you heard of the butterfly effect, Sophie? The theory that small actions can have large consequences?" I nodded, uncertain where he was going. "Your actions in the diner, they were a small thing in the grand scheme. A coffee pot thrown, a moment's courage. But they created ripples." He picked up his dessert fork, contemplating the pastry before him. "Those ripples reached me. Now they're reaching you. I don't understand. I've been looking for something for a long time. Someone, perhaps." His eyes met mine. Someone who acts without calculation, who sees a child in danger and moves without thought for herself, who refuses money that could change her life because she fears the strings attached. He set the fork down untouched. "Do you know how rare that is in my world?" I swallowed hard. "I'm just a waitress." "No. You're a woman of principle in a world that rewards compromise." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine so lightly I could have imagined it. "I'm offering you a chance, Sophie. Not $50,000. Something much more valuable." "What?" "Partnership." The word hung between us, loaded with unspoken implications. "What kind of partnership?" "I need someone I can trust, someone outside my usual circles. Someone who sees clearly." His voice dropped slightly. "The coffee incident showed me you have instincts. Courage. Integrity. You don't even know me. I know enough." He withdrew his hand. "I'm opening a new foundation. Legitimate business. Focused on children's health care. I want you to run it." Of all the things I'd expected him to say, this wasn't one of them. I don't have the qualifications for something like that. Qualifications can be acquired. Integrity cannot." He pushed a folder across the table that I hadn't noticed before. $300,000 a year, full benefits, flexible hours so you can be with Lily. The foundation would provide specialized care for children like her, those falling through the cracks of the healthcare system. I stared at the folder without opening it. Why me? Why not someone with experience? Experience often comes with compromised ethics. He shrugged slightly. "Besides, I owe you my life. This seems a fitting way to balance that debt." "By offering me a job I'm not qualified for?" "By offering you the chance to help children like your daughter while securing her future." His expression softened marginally. The check was a gesture. This is an opportunity. I finally opened the folder. Inside were details of the Volkov Children's Health Initiative. Mission statements, budgets, organizational charts. It looked legitimate, professional, exactly like any other corporate proposal. But the salary figure made me dizzy. "I'd need to think about it," I said finally, closing the folder. "This is a lot to process. Of course, take the week." He signaled for the check, our dinner check, not my $50,000 one. "Keep the proposal and the other check for now. Consider them both." As we stood to leave, he stepped closer, his presence suddenly overwhelming. Up close I could smell his cologne, Something subtle and expensive, with notes of cedar and amber. One thing, Sophie. His voice was low, meant only for me. If you accept my offer, you accept my protection as well. Non-negotiable. I don't need protection. Something cold flickered in his eyes. The man who came for me in the diner, he wasn't working alone. There are others who would use any connection to me as leverage, including a brave waitress who intervened at the wrong moment. Fear coiled in my stomach. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. He placed his hand lightly on the small of my back, guiding me toward the exit. I would never allow harm to come to you or your daughter, but to ensure that certain arrangements would need to be in place. The elevator ride down was silent, tension crackling between us. In the lobby, a sleek black car waited. Dmitri stood beside it, opening the door as we approached. I can take a cab, I said quickly. Indulge me. Volkov's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Dmitri will see you safely home. Before I could protest further, he lifted my hand to his lips in a gesture so old-fashioned it caught me off guard. His eyes held mine over our joined hands. Consider my offer, Sophie, carefully. Then he was gone, disappearing into another waiting car, leaving me with Dmitri, and a head spinning with possibilities I'd never dared imagine, and fears I'd never wanted to confront. The car that carried me home was not just a car. It was a fortress on wheels. Bulletproof glass, Dmitri explained without prompting. Security features I couldn't begin to comprehend. A silent statement about the world Mikhail Volkov inhabited, where such precautions were necessary rather than excessive. He likes you, Dmitri said as we pulled away from Athena, his eyes meeting mine briefly in the rearview mirror. I clutched my purse with the check and proposal inside. He doesn't know me. He knows enough. Dmitri navigated through downtown traffic with surprising grace for such a large man. Mr. Volkov sees people clearly. It is a gift. And what does he see in me? I couldn't help asking. Something worth protecting. His voice softened slightly. It has been some time since he took personal interest in anyone outside business. The implication hung between us. Unspoken, but impossible to ignore. The foundation offer. Is it real? Very real. He has been planning it for months. The director position? That is new. We rode in silence after that, the proposal folder heavy on my lap. When we reached my building, Dmitri insisted on walking me up all 4 flights of stairs to my door. His eyes took in the peeling paint, the flickering hallway lights, the sound of arguments filtering through thin walls. You should not live here, he said simply. Not everyone has options, Dmitri. Now you do. He waited until I unlocked my door, then handed me a small device that resembled a cell phone. Keep this with you. If you need anything at all, press this button. He indicated a red emergency button on the side. Day or night. I'm not in danger. His expression remained neutral. Let us hope it stays that way. After he left, I found Mrs. Patel dozing on my couch, Lily long asleep in the bedroom. The older woman stirred as I entered, eyes widening at my appearance. You look beautiful, Beta, she whispered, gathering her shawl. Did you have a good evening? I wasn't sure how to answer. Life-altering, terrifying, tempting beyond measure. It was, interesting. She nodded knowingly. The man whose life you saved, he is important, yes? Powerful. How did you know it was him? Mrs. Patel smiled. The car that has been parked across the street since yesterday. Men in suits who pretend not to watch our building. She patted my cheek. Be careful with powerful men. They forget that some treasures are fragile. After she left, I kicked off my uncomfortable shoes and sat at the kitchen table, spreading the contents of both my purse and the folder before me. The check, the proposal, Volkov's business card, the emergency device Dmitri had given me. Pieces of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to complete. I poured myself a glass of the cheap wine I kept for rare occasions and tried to think clearly. The foundation job was tempting. More than tempting. The salary alone would transform our lives. Lily could have the best medical care, a room of her own, a future without constant financial strain, but Volkov's words echoed, if you accept my offer, you accept my protection as well. Non-negotiable. What did that mean exactly? Security measures? Bodyguards following us? Or something deeper, more binding, a connection to Volkov himself that would fundamentally change who we were, how we lived. I was still sitting there when my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "You're still awake. Thinking too much." MV. A chill ran through me. I glanced toward my apartment windows, the blinds drawn but suddenly feeling too transparent. "How do you know I'm awake?" I typed back before I could think better of it. The response came immediately. "I don't. But I know you. You analyze, calculate, worry. That's not knowing me. That's an educated guess. Perhaps. Did you look at the proposal?" I stared at the phone. "Yes. It seems legitimate. It is, as is my offer. As are the risks." "What risks exactly?" I found myself holding my breath, waiting for his answer. "The risk of change. The risk of connection. The risk that once you step into my world, you may not wish to leave." The wine turned sour in my mouth. "That sounds like a threat." "No threat. An observation." "Sleep well, Sophie. We'll speak tomorrow." I set the phone down, unsettled by how easily he'd read my thoughts from a distance. More unsettling was how the conversation had left me feeling not frightened, but seen, in a way few people had ever truly seen me. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay beside Lily, listening to her breathing, clearer now that her fever had broken, and tried to imagine a future where she never had to worry about medication or doctor's bills, where I didn't have to choose between paying rent and buying her new shoes, where we were safe, protected, secure. All I had to do was say yes to a man who made people disappear. Morning brought no clarity, only the harsh reality of returning to normal life after glimpsing an alternative. I dressed for my shift at the diner, kissed Lily goodbye as she left for kindergarten with our neighbor's daughter, and tried to pretend the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. The diner seemed smaller somehow, dingier. Elena watched me closely as I tied my apron, her eyes curious. "So? How was dinner with Chicago's most dangerous bachelor?" I poured coffee for an elderly regular who pretended not to listen. "Surreal. He offered me a job." Elena nearly dropped the plate she was carrying. "What kind of job?" she asked, voice lowered. "Running a children's healthcare foundation, legitimate business according to him." "And you believe that?" I shrugged, uncertain. "The paperwork looks real. The salary is—" I shook my head. "Life-changing." Elena pulled me into the back hallway, away from curious ears. "Sophie, listen to me. Men like Volkov don't separate their legitimate and illegitimate businesses. Everything connects. Everything serves multiple purposes." "So you think the foundation is a front?" "I think nothing involving Mikhail Volkov is as simple as it appears." She squeezed my arm. "Just be careful. Think of Lily." "I am thinking of Lily. That's the problem." I pulled away. Table 6 needs menus. The shift dragged endlessly. Every time the bell above the door chimed, I found myself looking up, half expecting to see Volkov or Dmitri. They never appeared, but the weight of last night's conversation, the proposal sitting in my bag, felt like a physical presence following me through the diner. I was wiping down the counter when my phone rang. Mrs. Patel's number. My heart immediately raced. She never called during the day unless it was an emergency. "Mrs. Patel? What's wrong?" "It's Lily," she said, her voice tight with worry. "She collapsed at school. They've taken her to Mercy Hospital." The world narrowed to a pinpoint of fear. "What happened?" "Her breathing. Very bad. The school called an ambulance." I could hear the sounds of traffic behind her voice. "I am going there now." "I'm on my way." I hung up, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. "Elena, I have to go. Lily's in the hospital." She took one look at my face and nodded. "Go, don't worry about the shift." I ran from the diner, hailing a cab with frantic waves. The ride to Mercy Hospital was a blur of terror and worst-case scenarios playing through my mind. Lily had had breathing problems before, but never bad enough for hospitalization. Never an ambulance. The emergency room was chaos. Crying children, harried nurses, the antiseptic smell that poorly masked underlying illness. I pushed my way to the reception desk. My daughter was brought in by ambulance. Lily Miller, 5 years old. The nurse typed something into her computer. Yes, they're examining her now. If you'll take a seat, I need to see her. The doctor will come speak with you soon. Her tone was practiced professional indifference. Please wait in the designated area. I found Mrs. Patel in the waiting room, her usually calm face drawn with concern. She stood when she saw me, pulling me into a tight hug. What happened? I asked. During physical education, she couldn't breathe. The teacher said she turned blue. Mrs. Patel's voice wavered. They used an inhaler, but it didn't help enough. I sank into a chair, the fear of physical weight on my chest. Did they say anything else? Is she stable? They wouldn't tell me. I'm not family. She squeezed my hand, but she was conscious in the ambulance, asking for you. The next 2 hours were the longest of my life. No one would tell me anything beyond, the doctor is with her. I filled out paperwork, handed over our insurance card with its pathetic coverage limits, and prayed to gods I wasn't sure I believed in. Finally, a tired-looking doctor appeared. Ms. Miller? I'm Dr. Reeves. I've been treating Lily. I stood on unsteady legs. Is she okay? She's stabilized, he said, his expression serious. But I'm concerned about the severity of this episode. Her oxygen levels dropped dangerously low. We've started her on steroids and a breathing treatment, but she'll need to stay overnight for observation. Relief ward with fresh worry. Can I see her? He nodded. She's been asking for you, but first, I'd like to discuss her ongoing treatment plan. These episodes are becoming more frequent and severe, based on her records. Her regular doctor said it was just bad asthma. Dr. Reeves shook his head. I've ordered additional tests. This presentation suggests something potentially more complex. Has she seen a pulmonary specialist? The question carried the weight of medical bills we couldn't afford, specialists our insurance wouldn't cover. No. He must have read the fear in my face. Not just for Lily's health, but for how we would manage. His expression softened. Let's take it one step at a time. I've scheduled a consultation with our pediatric pulmonologist for tomorrow morning. Our insurance will figure something out, he said kindly, though we both knew what that meant. More debt. Payment plans stretching into infinity. The choice between treatment and bankruptcy. Lily was in a curtained area of the pediatric emergency ward, looking impossibly small in the hospital bed. An oxygen mask covered her face, and monitors beeped steadily beside her. When she saw me, her eyes widened, and she tried to sit up. Easy, sweetheart, I said, rushing to her side. Don't try to talk, just rest. She pulled the mask down slightly. I got to ride in an ambulance, she whispered, as if sharing an exciting secret rather than a terrifying medical emergency. It had lights and everything. I laughed through the tears threatening to spill. That's my brave girl. I replaced her mask gently. You just focus on breathing, okay? I'll be right here. Mrs. Patel stayed until visiting hours ended, then reluctantly left with promises to bring clothes for both of us in the morning. I settled into the uncomfortable chair beside Lily's bed, watching her finally sleep, the oxygen mask fogging rhythmically with each breath. It was nearly midnight when my phone vibrated with a text. I heard about Lily. Whatever you need, it's yours, no conditions. MV. I stared at the message, too exhausted and afraid to question how he knew, or what his offer really meant. Instead, I typed the only thing that mattered. They say she needs a specialist. Tests. Our insurance won't cover it. The response came immediately. It's handled. Give the hospital my name. I hesitated, then typed, Why are you doing this? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, because I can. Because she deserves care. Because you shouldn't have to choose between your daughter's health and your principles. Before I could respond, another message appeared. This isn't about the job offer. This is separate. No strings. Whether you accept or decline the position, Lily will receive the care she needs. I looked at my sleeping daughter, the monitors tracking her struggling breaths, and made a decision I hoped I wouldn't regret. Thank you. When morning came, I was stiff from sleeping in the hospital chair, my neck aching and eyes gritty. Lily's condition had improved overnight, her oxygen levels rising steadily as the medications did their work. She was sitting up now, the mask replaced with a nasal cannula, coloring in a book a nurse had brought her. Morning, sunshine, I said, smoothing her tangled curls. How are you feeling? Better. Can we go home soon? Hospital food is yucky. I smiled, relieved to see her personality returning. The doctor needs to check you first, but maybe soon. A soft knock interrupted us. Dr. Reeves entered, accompanied by an older woman in a white coat. Ms. Miller, this is Dr. Chen, our pediatric pulmonologist. Dr. Chen smiled warmly at Lily, then turned to me. I've reviewed Lily's case, and I'd like to run a more comprehensive series of tests this morning. Her symptoms suggest this may be more than standard asthma. What kind of tests? A complete pulmonary function assessment, high-resolution CT scan, and some blood work to rule out specific conditions. She spoke matter-of-factly but kindly. I understand insurance coverage is a concern. It's taken care of, I said, the words feeling strange in my mouth. We have a sponsor. Dr. Reeves raised an eyebrow but nodded. Excellent. Then we'll proceed immediately. The sooner we identify the underlying cause, the sooner we can establish an effective treatment plan. After they left to make arrangements, I knelt beside Lily's bed. The doctors are going to do some special pictures of your lungs to see why you're having trouble breathing. It might take a little while, but I'll be right here waiting. Will it hurt? Her small voice made my heart clench. Not at all. You just have to lie very still, like a statue. I tapped her nose gently. Think you can do that? She nodded solemnly. I'm good at statue. When the nurses came to take her for the first test, I found myself alone in the hospital room. I pulled out my phone, staring at last night's text exchange with Volkov. Whatever you need, it's yours. No conditions. But there were always conditions, weren't there? Even if they weren't spoken aloud. On impulse, I dialed the number on his business card. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. Sophie. His voice was calm, steady. How is Lily this morning? Better. They're running tests now. I took a deep breath. I need to understand what you did. They're not asking for insurance information anymore. Not talking about payment plans. What exactly does handled mean? There was a brief pause. It means the hospital has been instructed to provide the best possible care without concern for cost. All expenses, past, present, and future, have been covered. Just like that? Just like that. I could almost hear him shrug. I made a donation to their pediatric wing. In exchange, Lily receives VIP care. Simple transaction. But nothing about Mikhail Volkov was simple. How much of a donation? Enough. Another pause. 2 million. The amount made me sit heavily on the edge of Lily's empty bed. That's nothing compared to a child's health. My foundation would make similar investments once operational. Consider this a preview. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the scale of his intervention. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, but I would like to see you when Lily is stable. We still have matters to discuss, the job offer, among other things. His tone shifted slightly, became more personal. I'm concerned about you, Sophie. You've spent the night in a hospital chair after working a full shift. You need rest. The genuine worry in his voice caught me off guard. I'm fine. Stubbornness. He sounded almost amused. Another quality I admire. Dmitri will bring you a change of clothes and proper food. Non-negotiable, he added, before I could protest. For Lily's sake, if not your own. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet hospital room, trying to reconcile the man who spoke with such warmth about my daughter's health with the ruthless figure from rumors and whispered warnings. Were they the same person? Could they be? True to his word, Dmitri arrived an hour later carrying not just clothes and food, but a soft blanket, toiletries, and a stuffed elephant for Lily. He set everything down without ceremony. Mr. Volkov thought the child might like this, he said, indicating the elephant. His sister had one similar as a girl. The mention of Volkov having a sister, a personal detail, a glimpse of his past, humanized him in a way that made my carefully constructed walls waver. Thank you, Dmitri. And thank him. He nodded, then hesitated. The doctors, they are good? The best, apparently, since Mr. Volkov's intervention. Something like satisfaction crossed Dmitri's face. Good. Children should have the best care, always. For a moment, the stoic bodyguard disappeared, replaced by something more vulnerable. Then his professional mask returned. "If you need anything else, you have the device I gave you." The tests took most of the day. Lily returned from each one progressively more tired, but still remarkably brave. By evening, she was asleep again, this time with the stuffed elephant clutched tightly in her arms. Dr. Chen returned with preliminary results, her expression carefully neutral. "We've identified the issue. Lily has a rare form of pulmonary hypertension, increased blood pressure in the arteries of her lungs. It explains the progressive breathing difficulties, the fatigue, the episodes of severe distress." The clinical words washed over me, each one a blow. "Is it treatable?" "Yes, though it's complex. She'll need specialized medication, regular monitoring, possibly some minimally invasive procedures." Dr. Chen sat beside me. "The good news is we caught it relatively early. With proper treatment, children with this condition can lead normal, active lives, and without proper treatment, her hesitation told me everything. It's progressive. Without intervention, it worsens over time. Progressive worsens. Words that no parent should ever hear about their child's health, but we have excellent treatment options," Dr. Chen continued quickly. "And given your financial arrangement, Lily will have access to the best care available, including some experimental therapies showing promising results." After she left, I curled up in the chair beside Lily's bed, watching her sleep peacefully, unaware of the diagnosis hanging over her like a shadow. The stuffed elephant, a gift from a man who commanded fear throughout the city, tucked under her chin. Life had strange symmetry sometimes. 3 days later, we were cleared to go home. Lily, resilient as children often are, was eager to return to our apartment, to her toys and routine. I was less enthusiastic, knowing that our cramped space with its poor ventilation and occasional mold issues was exactly the wrong environment for a child with pulmonary problems. As we waited for discharge papers, a nurse I hadn't seen before entered, carrying a thick envelope. "Ms. Miller, these are for you." She handed me the envelope with a smile. "And Dr. Chen asked me to remind you about Lily's follow-up appointment next week." Inside the envelope were detailed care instructions, prescriptions, and, unexpectedly, keys. Attached was a note in now familiar handwriting. 1420 Lakeshore Drive, Apt 1502. Better air quality. Closer to hospital. Security in lobby. No strings. Just practical necessity for Lily's health. Car waiting when you're ready. M. I stared at the keys, the address in one of Chicago's most exclusive residential buildings. This wasn't just help. This was life reconstruction on a scale I couldn't comprehend. When we exited the hospital, a familiar black car waited at the curb, Dimitri standing beside it. Lily, who had met him briefly during our stay, waved excitedly. "Mr. Bearman, look at my elephant." She held up the stuffed toy proudly. Dimitri's usually stern face softened. "Very nice. Does it have a name?" "Ellie." She clutched it tighter. "Mommy, can we go home now? I want to show Ellie my other toys." I knelt beside her, keys clutched in my hand. "Sweetheart, we're going to stay somewhere new for a while. A place that's better for your breathing." I chose my words carefully. "It's like an adventure." Her eyes widened. "Like a vacation?" "Something like that." I looked up at Dimitri. "I haven't agreed to this. The apartment is prepaid for 6 months," he said quietly. "After that, your decision. But for now, the doctor recommends clean air, proper filtration systems, proximity to medical care." He opened the car door, all of which are waiting. The apartment wasn't just an apartment. It was a sanctuary. Spacious, sunlit, with views of Lake Michigan that made me catch my breath. State-of-the-art air purifiers hummed quietly in each room. The kitchen gleamed with appliances I didn't know how to use. A second bedroom had been furnished specifically for Lily, with a canopied bed and shelves filled with books and toys. "This is a princess room," Lily exclaimed, spinning in circles with Ellie the elephant. "Can we stay forever?" I couldn't answer her. The enormity of what Volkov had done, the hospital bills, the specialists, now this apartment, was overwhelming. The debt I was accumulating wasn't financial, but something deeper, more binding. When Lily finally fell asleep that night, Exhausted from excitement and exploration, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights shimmer across the lake. Chicago looked different from 15 stories up. Beautiful, orderly, full of possibility rather than struggle. My phone buzzed with a text. "Are you settled?" I typed back. "This is too much. It's what Lily needs. And what do you need in return?" The response took longer this time. "Dinner. Tomorrow. We'll discuss everything." I stared at the message, then at the sleeping city below. I thought of Lily's diagnosis, of the treatment she would need for years to come, of the resources Volkov commanded with seemingly effortless authority, of the foundation job offer that now seemed almost secondary to the personal interest he had taken in our lives. "Yes," I replied simply. The next evening, I left Lily with a private nurse Volkov had arranged, a grandmotherly woman with impeccable credentials and a warm smile that immediately won my daughter's trust. This time, we didn't meet at a restaurant. A car delivered me to a sleek modern house overlooking the lake, secluded behind walls and security gates. Dmitri ushered me inside, then disappeared, leaving me in a minimalist foyer of stone and glass. Volkov appeared from an adjacent room, dressed more casually than I'd seen him before, dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made his pale eyes more striking. Without the formal suits, he seemed both more approachable and somehow more intimate. "Thank you for coming," he said, leading me into a living area where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the twilight sky. "How is Lily adjusting to the new apartment?" "She thinks it's magical. She told her elephant we live in the sky now." A genuine smile softened his features. "Children adapt quickly, a valuable skill, one I'm still working on," I admitted. He gestured for me to sit on a sleek leather sofa, then poured 2 glasses of wine from a decanter. "I imagine you have questions, too many to count." I accepted the glass he offered, but let's start with the obvious one. Why? Why all of this? The hospital, the apartment, the specialists. It goes far beyond repaying a debt for throwing a coffee pot. Volkov sat across from me, studying me with that piercing gaze. "I told you before, I've been looking for something rare. Integrity without agenda, courage without calculation." He leaned forward slightly. "In my world, Sophie, people approach me for what I can give them. Money, power, protection. Their motives are always transparent, always selfish. And mine aren't? You threw that pot to save a child you didn't know, at risk to yourself. You returned a check that could have changed your life. Even now, you question gifts that benefit your daughter because you fear the cost." He shook his head slightly. "No, your motives are different. So all of this, it's an experiment? Testing my integrity? No. It's recognition. Appreciation." He set his glass down. "And perhaps selfishness of my own. I want you in my life, Sophie Miller. In whatever capacity you choose." The implications of his words hung between us, charged and unavoidable. "The foundation position is real," he continued, "as is everything else I've offered. No hidden agendas, no secret criminal enterprises disguised as charity." A shadow of amusement crossed his face. "Though I understand why you might suspect that. Your reputation is partly deserved," he acknowledged. "I've done things I won't apologize for, made choices others would condemn, but the foundation is separate, clean. Something I've wanted to build for a long time. Why children's health care specifically?" Something flickered in his expression, an old pain, quickly masked. "My sister died at 12, leukemia. In Russia in the 90s, treatment options were limited, especially for families without connections." He looked away briefly. "No child should suffer because of circumstances beyond their control." The revelation, personal, painful, shifted something between us. This wasn't the calculated move of a man accustomed to buying what he wanted. This was something deeper, rooted in old wounds and genuine belief. "So what happens now?" I asked quietly. He turned back to me, his gaze direct and unwavering. "That depends on you. The foundation job is yours if you want it. The apartment too, regardless of your decision. Lily's medical care is guaranteed no matter what. And if I say yes to all of it, to you, then we build something together, the foundation. A life. whatever shape that takes. He reached across the space between us, his hand covering mine. I'm not offering a transaction, Sophie. I'm offering a partnership. In all things. The warmth of his hand, the intensity of his gaze, the quiet certainty in his voice. All of it pulled at something deep within me, something I'd buried beneath years of struggle and self-reliance. I need to be clear, I said, not withdrawing my hand. I won't be owned. Not by anyone. Not even someone who saved my daughter's life. His fingers tightened slightly around mine. Ownership isn't what I want. Trust is. He leaned closer. Trust me with your future. With Lily's future. Let me protect you both. Not because you're mine, but because you choose to be. In that moment, the city lights reflecting off the lake behind him, I made my decision. Not just for Lily, though she would always be my priority. Not just for security or comfort or ease, but for the possibility of something I hadn't allowed myself to want in a very long time, a future without constant fear. A partner who saw me, truly saw me, and valued what he found, a chance to do meaningful work that would help children like Lily. Yes, I said simply. 6 months later, the Volkov Children's Health Initiative opened its doors in a renovated historic building downtown. As executive director, I presided over the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Lily beside me, her breathing clear and strong, thanks to the treatments she'd been receiving. Mikhail stood slightly behind us, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back. To the watching crowd, he was the benefactor, the wealthy businessman investing in the community. Only a few knew he was also the man who shared our breakfast table each morning, who read bedtime stories to Lily with surprising patience, who held me through the nights when fear for my daughter's future kept me awake. The city talked, of course, the unlikely pair, the waitress and the Russian. Some whispered about my rapid rise, about the obvious advantages of catching Mikhail Volkov's eye. Others spun darker tales of coercion or manipulation. None of them knew the truth, that he had offered me freedom, not captivity. That each step toward him had been my choice, made with clear eyes and full understanding. That beneath the ruthless businessman was a man who had lost too much to take anything for granted. As cameras flashed and reporters called questions, Mikhail leaned close to my ear. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. I watched as Lily charmed the gathered crowd, her stuffed elephant still clutched in one arm despite being too big for toys now. I thought of our life before, the constant struggle, the fear, the loneliness, and our life now. Complicated but secure, challenging but protected. "Not one," I answered, turning to meet those pale blue eyes that had changed everything with a single look across a diner floor. Worth every drop of coffee. His rare smile appeared, the one reserved only for me and Lily, genuine and unguarded. "I told you from the beginning, Sophie Miller. A debt is a debt." His hand found mine, fingers intertwining, and this one, I'll spend a lifetime repaying. The foundation would go on to help thousands of children access medical care they couldn't otherwise afford. The city's whispers would eventually shift from scandal to admiration. And two people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances would build a life neither had dared imagine, all because of a coffee pot thrown in a moment of courage and a man who recognized its value beyond measure.